After planning every step of the heist to steal a postmodern statue set to be auctioned for $100 million, Wolf and his team end up falling asleep. The next morning, when they wake up, they realize that something didn't go as planned, but they can't remember anything that happened the night before. While Snake tries to figure out how to get down from the ceiling, and Shark wonders how he ended up in a clown costume, Wolf receives a call from his friend Piranha and discovers that he has been captured. Immediately, Shark and Snake set out to follow the tire tracks left on the street to try to find their missing friend. Meanwhile, Wolf and Webbs break into the museum and hack the security system to take a look at the footage captured by the cameras the night before. As they walk through the museum's corridors, the duo ends up being spotted by two security guards and has to hurry to find the exit. As they approach the door, both are surrounded, and just as they're about to be caught by the guards, Webbs turns off the museum lights, buying enough time for Wolf to escape. Outside, the fugitives meet up with the rest of the team, and Snake leads his friends to Piranha's car, which was found parked in an alley. Suddenly, the group hears some knocking on the trunk, and right after that, Scully climbs out of the vehicle. At that moment, the goat comes face to face with Shark and is startled by his clown costume, causing him to faint. Realizing that the leader of the Bodes Bosais was trapped in his trunk, Wolf begins to suspect that Piranha has been captured by Scully's gang, and contacts them to propose an exchange. However, upon arriving at the location, Wolf and his friends discover that the Bodes Bosais have no idea where Piranha is, so they decide to head home. Upon arriving at the hideout, while everyone mourns the disappearance of one of their team members, Shark starts feeling sick and throws up. At that moment, everyone discovers that Piranha was actually inside his friend's stomach the whole time, as he was the target of a birthday prank. The previous year, he had been extremely upset that his friends had forgotten his birthday, so this year, the team decided to plan a surprise. The robbery was just an excuse to keep Piranha away from home while Wolf and the others prepared a party. However, the birthday boy ended up arriving earlier than planned, and Shark got so anxious that he accidentally swallowed his friend. Later, when they opened a can of pickled herring, Piranha's favorite food, the team got food poisoning and temporarily lost their memories. Although he didn't have the party he wanted, Piranha thanks his friends for remembering his birthday and says they are the best team ever. The next day, during a boring afternoon, the five friends decide to hold a thieves contest, where the first challenge is to go 12 hours without committing any crimes. In an attempt to make the challenge even more interesting, Webbs, the judge, sets a prize for the grand winner and states that whoever manages to make it to the end of the day without committing any crimes will be able to move into the biggest room in the house. For the next 15 minutes, each team member goes off in search of an activity to occupy their mind and keep them from thinking about committing crimes. But Snake can't contain his impulses and decides to tie himself to a wooden beam. However, not even this strategy can hold the snake back. Even with his body tied to the ceiling, he manages to squeeze through the window and slip out to carry out his first theft of the day. Sometime later, Snake returns home with a box of candy he just stole and encourages his friends to do the same. When he realizes that the environment is distracting him, Wolf decides to go for a walk, and Shark decides to accompany him. During the walk, Wolf comes across countless opportunities to commit the thefts he loves so much, so he asks Shark to distract him with stories from his time working in the corporate world. While waiting for the contest to end, Piranha decides to take a nap and spends the entire day sleeping so he won't be tempted to commit a crime. However, shortly after being disqualified, Snake wakes up his friend and convinces him that the 12-hour challenge has already come to an end. Upon hearing this, Piranha gets excited about his victory and goes out to celebrate, but returns minutes later with several bags of cash. Just then, he is caught by Webbs and learns that he has lost his chance to get the best room, since he ended up falling into Snake's trap. Now, the contest is solely between Shark and Wolf, who are engaged in a fierce chase in the middle of the street. After provoking his sharp-toothed friend to try to convince him to commit a crime, the wolf has to flee to avoid being devoured and ends up running a red light. By doing so, Wolf breaks a traffic law and ends up losing the challenge, just like Shark, who tried to devour his gang leader. Since no one was able to make it through the day without committing a crime, the competition is over, and Webbs ends up with the biggest room, just as she had planned from the start. The following night, since it has been a long time since they've pulled off any major heists, the gang breaks into the museum to steal an ancient amulet of inestimable value, and accidentally ends up freeing an ancient wolf from its cryogenic sleep. Unbeknownst to them, Wolf and his friends are followed by Talia, and after feeding the beast, they try to recruit her to their team. However, shortly after the first day of field training, the thieves realize that the new member has no talent for crime. Not only does Talia mess up the heist, but she also throws their money away and puts everyone's lives at risk when she gets hungry. Faced with this, Webbs proposes kicking the wolf out of the team, but Wolf convinces his friends to be a little more patient with their ancestor, as he believes she still has a lot to teach. Determined to give Talia one more chance, Wolf decides to take her back to the museum to steal more art pieces, but is surprised to discover that the wolf actually went there to return what they had taken earlier. At that moment, the leader of the bad guys takes a look at the cave paintings that tell Talia's story and discovers that his ancestor was a crime fighter. Immediately, Wolf flees to avoid being handed over to the police, and ends up being saved by his friends, who show up just in time to rescue him. During the escape, the wolf apologizes for ignoring his companion's warnings, and Shark drives to Gary's station. When he realizes the bad guys are in danger, the police officer decides to intervene and manages to calm Talia, who soon identifies with the guard. At that moment, a great friendship blossoms between the two crime fighters, and Wolf bids farewell to his ancestor, realizing that they belong to completely different worlds. Relieved to have gotten rid of Talia, the criminals drive back home, and along the way, Snake receives a call from his mother. Excited, Serpentina tells him that her wedding is set and asks her son to attend the ceremony, which will take place the following day. In an attempt to find out if his mother is telling the truth, Snake asks his friends to take him to her, and is shocked to discover that Mr. Wigglesworth is going to become his stepfather. The truth is that the last time they saw that old man, the bad guys had all their money stolen and were sent to prison. So, driven by a desire for revenge, Snake and his friends decide to do whatever it takes to stop that wedding, and they stage a robbery in broad daylight so that Wigglesworth will be arrested. While the man breaks into the jewelry store to steal a pair of wedding rings, Snake and his friends call the police and report the robbery. Soon after, the alarm goes off and the gang flees, leaving Wigglesworth behind alone. Just as Snake was about to break the news of his stepfather's arrest, Wigglesworth walks in through the front door and reveals that he managed to escape the police. At that moment, Serpentina realizes that her son is trying to get rid of Wigglesworth and asks Webbs for help to move up the ceremony. While the bride and her maid of honor make preparations for the party, Snake and Shark come up with new plans to convince Wigglesworth to call off the wedding, but he remains steadfast in his love for Serpentina. As a last resort, Shark dresses up as a private detective and claims that Snake is cheating on her fiancé with a famous magician. Upon hearing this news, Wigglesworth is devastated and decides to perform an extremely risky stunt to try to prove himself to his beloved. When he sees his mother crying for the first time, Snake realizes she has genuine feelings for Wigglesworth and begins to regret trying to interfere with their marriage. In an attempt to stop his stepfather from risking his life by walking on a tightrope, Snake and his friends start climbing the building, but they can't make it in time. While walking across the high-voltage wires, the man has an accident, and during his fall, he is saved by Snake. However, while Wigglesworth receives applause from the media, the bad guys discover that Snake never planned to marry him. In fact, the whole wedding story was nothing more than a ruse to lure the gang out of their hideout, which has just been raided by Cougar. Wolf's former mentor explains that he went there to retrieve the gold he had hidden before faking his own perishment, but discovers that the bad guys have found the vault and spent nearly all of his gold bars. According to Cougar, there was the equivalent of $50 billion in his stash, and to recover that money without having to disavow his perishment, he promised a generous payment to Snake, whose mission was to keep the gang out of the hideout for an entire day. The reason Cougar faked his own perishment is that he didn't want to share all that gold with his former crime partners, but when he realized he couldn't keep running for much longer, he changed his mind. However, now that all that gold has been spent, Wolf and his friends are in trouble, because the gang the Puma used to be part of already knows about all of them. To prevent these heavy-hitting criminals from coming after them, the bad guys will have to help Cougar break into Arrow Kofer, the most secure and valuable criminal bank in existence. According to the Cougar, this vault is inside an airplane that's always in the air on autopilot, and it has an ultra-valuable container of liquid platinum on board. Upon hearing this, Wolf and his friends get excited about the idea of stealing something no thief has ever been able to steal, and decide to accept the challenge. With the help of jetpacks, the group circles the planes and sets up antennas so that Webbs can hack the autopilot. Since there are 3 Arrow safes, and only one contains the valuable cargo, the team splits into pairs to search for the liquid platinum. When he finally finds what he was looking for, Cougar invites Wolf to run away with him and reveals that he has programmed the other 2 planes to crash into the sea. Realizing that his friends' lives are in danger, Wolf immediately leaves the plane to go after them, and reveals that Cougar lied about being pursued by his old team. The truth is that the Cougar needed the bad guys' help to recover all the money he'd lost, and that's why he made up that whole story. As they talk, the 5 friends realize they are getting closer and closer to the ocean. so they use several pieces of industrial chewing gum to blow a huge bubble that allows them to land safely. Upon arriving home, Wolf remembers that the annual lifeguard parade is about to begin, which means that all the city's guards and police officers will be distracted enjoying the festivities. So, this is the perfect opportunity to pull off a good old-fashioned bank heist, but during the crime, a group of costumed robbers storms the financial institution and announces a robbery. After introducing themselves as members of Wolf's gang, the imposters order everyone to leave the building, but soon discover they are facing the real bad guys. Although they are fans of those guys, Jeff and his friends refuse to give up on the heist, so Wolf suggests a partnership and says they can split the loot 50-50. After teaching the newbies a few rules on how to pull off a successful heist, the criminals break into the vault and manage to steal the money, but end up surrounded by the police. At that moment, the two teams part ways, as they plan to go their separate ways to throw the authorities off their trail. However, just as they were about to escape, Wolf and his friends are betrayed, as Jeff and his gang decide to lock them inside the vault. Now that they've had the chance to learn from the city's most notorious criminals, Jeff, Kai-hoon, and Kev plan to get them arrested so they can take their place in the criminal underworld. However, before Gary and the other cops can catch up to them, Piranha uses his incredible strength to break down the door, and Wolf steals the police car to go after the traitors. During the chase, Kai-hoon lures the bad guys into a no-end alley and relies on Kev's muscles to defeat them. What those guys don't realize is that, when he's angry, Piranha also becomes incredibly strong and nearly invincible. After defeating his three opponents single-handedly, the fish celebrates the victory with his friends, and the bad guys manage to reclaim their spot among the region's most dangerous criminals. After nearly having their getaway car stolen by Kai-hoon, the gang decides to create a security system to monitor the vehicle during their crimes. When Beverly is finally ready, Webbs decides to test the AI, and is proud to discover that her operating system is capable of driving the getaway vehicle on its own. In addition to ensuring the convertible isn't stolen during heists, Beverly also uses the city's traffic history to map out the best escape routes, ensuring that Wolf and his gang always manage to evade the police. Noticing that her AI is evolving too quickly, Webbs decides to limit its internet access, as she suspects that Beverly might end up taking on a life of its own. Despite this limitation, Beverly continues to do her job in an exemplary manner, and when one of the night owls tries to steal the car, the AI springs into action. Using an electric shock, she throws the owl out of the car, and increasingly earns Webb's trust. Gradually, the software becomes an increasingly important member of the team, but begins to take on secondary tasks, such as ordering dinner through delivery apps. Frustrated at not receiving the recognition she believes she deserves, Beverly rebels and sneaks out in the middle of the night to carry out her plan for revenge. In the morning, when they turn on the TV, the bad guys discover that a gang of super-intelligent cars is wreaking havoc in the city. While looking for a way to stop Beverly, Webbs discovers that her AI has gained access to the internet, and Snake confesses that he gave her the Wi-Fi password a few days ago. Even without knowing exactly how to cut off the connection between Beverly and the other cars, Webbs asks her team for help getting close to her, and as soon as she gets into the convertible, the tarantula hacks into the system. At that moment, she blocks the AI's commands over that vehicle, but Beverly continues to control the other cars. So, Webbs comes to the conclusion that the only way to prevent Beverly's empire from continuing is to take down the city's internet network. To ensure the spider can carry out her plan, Piranha and Snake attack the cars and end up getting captured while Wolf takes Webbs to the other side of the city. However, upon arriving at the transmission tower, the tarantula decides against destroying his greatest creation and ends up striking a peace deal with Beverly, who agrees to become a virtual assistant for the lair. The following week, Vanity, one of Hollywood's biggest stars, wins an award for her outstanding performance in her latest film, and upon learning of the award, the bad guys decide to steal the trophy. After Piranha attacks the driver, Wolf breaks into the limo and takes the actress for a ride, while Shark dresses up and breaks into Vanna's dressing room. Upon finding the golden crab, the shark looks at his reflection in the mirror and remembers the day he and Vanna rehearsed together for an audition for a role he really wanted. Back then, they were both still very young and shared the same dream, but Shark was unable to advance in his acting career and blames Vanna for sabotaging him. The shark believes his former friend poisoned him with spoiled food, and because of that, he was unable to take the audition. Now, years later, Shark has the chance to get revenge, and he's willing to do whatever it takes to ruin the career Vanna has built. So, that afternoon, during the filming of one of the scenes for the new movie starring the actress, Shark gives his worst performance yet and starts devouring the set. When scolded by Snake and Piranha, the shark threatens to reveal his disguise and destroy the entire operation if his friends try to stop him. After cutting off communication with his team, the big guy devours a cheese pancake and starts throwing up everything, as he plans to make Vanna as famous as he became years ago. At that moment, Shark feels he has completed his revenge and returns to the dressing room, where he finds his former colleague, who is very happy to see him. When he sees her again, Shark blames the actress for ruining his chance to become a Hollywood star, and claims that because of her, he felt sick during his performance. Upon hearing this accusation, Vanna feels confused, as she clearly remembers insisting that Shark not start anything before taking the auditions. At that moment, Shark's memory clears, and he remembers that, on that day, he ignored his friend's warnings. Immediately, the Shark is overcome with guilt and reveals his plan to try to sabotage Vanna's career. In an attempt to fix his mistake, Shark goes after the director to retrieve the footage of Vanna feeling sick, and enlists the help of his gang to destroy the flash drive containing the images. That same day, Vanna gives a TV interview and becomes even more famous when she reveals that she was captured by the bad guys, who ultimately ended up fleeing with her golden crab. Over the weekend, Wolf and his gang decide to commit an unprecedented crime and set up an ambush to raid an armored truck. However, when Snake finally manages to open the vault, the operation is interrupted by the arrival of Tanya, who tries to use tranquilizer darts to capture the gang members. Immediately, Webbs hacks the vehicle and speeds off to try to escape the woman, but Tanya takes her car to go after them. Luckily, the Vigilante gets distracted during the chase, giving the bad guys a chance to escape. However, just as the criminals breathe a sigh of relief, believing they've managed to escape, Tanya appears, and Piranha ends up getting hit. Seeing his friend immobilized, Wolf runs to grab him, and the entire team manages to escape, but ends up leaving empty-handed. After retrieving the bag of money, Tanya returns it to the armored car driver, and is featured in all the newspapers as the city's newest vigilante. That night, the bad guys are publicly humiliated, so Wolf decides to ask the Crime Council for help in trying to regain his prestige. During a meeting with the Goofy Goats and the Night Owls, Wolf devises a plan to steal the statue that is to be unveiled in Tanya's honor. While the Owls provide aerial cover, Shark poses as a security inspector to disable all the security sensors that have been installed around the monument. Meanwhile, Scully and his gang need to get Tanya's attention and lure her far away from the unveiling site. However, after a few minutes of pursuit, the goat is knocked off his motorcycle and is about to be hit by a tranquilizer dart when one of the owls appears to rescue him. As he flies over the city, Scully accidentally lets slip that Tanya's statue is being stolen, setting off the vigilante's alarm. At that moment, the wolf and his crew are still down in the sewers trying to dig a hole in the floor to steal the monument, and they manage to pull off the heist seconds before the security guard arrives. Next, the bad guys meet up with the other gangs at their hideout and wait for Tanya's next move. Later, when they turn on the TV, the criminals watch the vigilante's statement regarding the theft and realize that their rival has always been 2 steps ahead of them. The truth is that Tanya had already anticipated that the criminals would try to steal her statue, so she installed a trap. Using a remote control, she releases a stream of tranquilizer gas, immobilizing all 3 gangs at once. This way, Tanya will be able to track the GPS signal emitted by the statue, and thus, she intends to take down the city's biggest criminals all at once. After sending all the thieves to prison and ridding the streets of criminals, Tanya is rewarded by the governor and granted full authority to manage public safety. With crime eradicated, all guards and police officers are fired and replaced by robots, which patrol every neighborhood. As soon as they arrive in their cell, the bad guys start thinking of a way to get out of there, but Webb says she can't help this time, since her computer has been confiscated. At that moment, Snake springs into action, and after some negotiations, he retrieves his spider friend's laptop. As soon as Webbs opens the cell door, Piranha knocks out the robot guard with a single blow, and the team has to run to the command room to avoid being captured by the other machines. When she is informed of the bad guy's escape, Tanya alters her robot's settings, making them even more dangerous. While trying to decide whether or not to leave the city to rebuild their crime empire, Wolf and his companions end up being surrounded. However, just as they were about to be arrested again, Tiffany, the local news anchor, shows up to save them. During their escape, the journalist explains that Tanya is establishing her own tyranny in the city and has begun penalizing anyone caught doing something considered forbidden, such as chewing gum or staying up late. Upon hearing this, Wolf decides to stay in the city and free the residents from Tanya's tyranny. That night, Shark and Piranha break into the prison to free all the other criminals, and for the first time in the city's history, criminals and law-abiding citizens decide to unite for a common cause. The plan of all the citizens is to overthrow Tanya's tyrannical government, and to achieve this goal, they decide to create chaos. Seeing hundreds of people breaking the rules at the same time, the police robots become confused and end up suffering a system crash. When she finally finds the bad guys, Tanya orders her robots to capture them, but ends up becoming a target of the machines she built herself. Upon seeing Tanya throwing trash on the ground, the robots follow their programming and take the woman to jail. After freeing the city from the tyrannical regime, the bad guys are hailed as heroes and even get a tribute at the museum. To celebrate this victory, Wolf and his friends plan a new heist, continuing their legacy of crime. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.